Let's go live with Jack Kelly. Welcome to the one-of-a-kind LinkedIn live show that will help you with your job search and advancing your career. We will bring in educated career experts who will share their insights and give you inside tips on how to be successful in your job search. Now let's get into today's show with your host, Jack Kelly.
All right. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Andy Foote, LinkedIn guru, to LinkedIn Live show with Jack Kelly. So, hey, I'm really glad to have you here, Andy. Particularly this time of year where it's winding down, but people still need jobs, worried about finding a job, worried about losing a job, and mastering LinkedIn and knowing what to do and how to market yourself and how to brand yourself is so mission critical. And by all counts, you are the go-to guy. And I'm not saying this in a cavalier way. You're like the go-to guy who knows all about LinkedIn.
Well, thank you very kindly, Jack. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for that very warm intro. Yeah, I mean, I share what I know, and I share it frequently. And LinkedIn is my platform of choice, and I've worked hard at it and been on the platform for over 8 years.
Now, what made you decide to go and be kind of a LinkedIn expert? Because that's 8 years ago, that would be, wait, what's going on? How'd you find it? What made you decide to go in this direction?
Yeah, so I found myself as a stay-at-home dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking after my little one, and I was on the laptop, and I came across this thing called LinkedIn. And once I realized what it was, and more importantly, the potential of the platform, I dove straight in, and I started to educate myself on how to maximize the use of the platform. And I ended up getting a gig by doing, by putting in some of those techniques and things that I'd learned. But I actually started off with groups. That's where I started to play around with the LinkedIn platform back then. And it blew my mind, Jack, that I could build communities built around any kind of purpose. And more importantly, people would join those communities. So clearly, there's an audience of participants out there, and I got competitive with those groups. Some of them weren't growing fast enough, so I would jettison them. The ones that weren't performing as well as I'd hoped, I would say to one of the LinkedIn group members, I would ask them, "Hey, do you want to run this community?" And invariably they would say yes. So that's how I started to educate myself and to understand how it worked. And it's not I don't think it's an especially difficult platform to learn, but it does change all the time, and it does force the user to make hundreds of choices, hundreds of micro choices along the way. And not all of those choices are easy ones, and sometimes in terms of branding, they can trip you up.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it seems from the outside easy to navigate, but then when you realize, wait a minute, I post something and then no one's seeing it. Well, I don't get it. I have X amount of followers, X amount of first degree. They don't see what gives. And that's what I thought, if you're okay with this, really what I wanted to discuss with you is with the job seeker in mind. And I know you teach LinkedIn to all sorts of different people for all different types of reasons, but for this, to really help people who have lost their job. I mean, we had like 60 million plus people file for unemployment here in the US since mid-March. Millions more are worried about holding on to their job. Millions are taking jobs underneath what they really want, but they just need the paycheck. They need the health insurance. And LinkedIn is the go-to platform, like it or not. There's a go-to platform for white-collar professionals. And now it seems to evolve to more people as well. And I got a whole, when I mentioned that you're going to be on, people love you. And I got so many questions that they share, because I say, hey, if you have any questions, let them know. And they got it. So if you don't mind, I have a lot of questions, like just involving with the whole search, the career. So if that's okay with you, we can kind of talk about some of those things. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
So
Shoot.
One of the biggest things is this. What I hear from people is that they know they should be on LinkedIn, obviously, and they know they should market themselves, but they'll tell me, hey, I'm kind of afraid. I don't want to say anything dumb. I don't want to say anything that like seems inappropriate. I don't want to post it and no one like comments that I feel really embarrassed. And so they don't do anything. And then if you're looking for a job and you're really not getting out there, you're defeating it. What would you suggest for people who have that? And it's real. It's like, they're not just saying it. They're not like lazy. I don't want to do it, but I believe them that they're just nervous about it.
Yeah, I would say overcome those nerves as quickly as you possibly can. A saying by David Niven comes to mind. He said, "If all of life's a stage, why wait in the wings?" And for job seekers in particular, you have to overcome that shyness or whatever it is, right? That well, why would anyone read anything that I've written, right? Why would anyone watch me on video? Well, everyone I think has stories, and not stories as in the stories feature, the ephemeral feature. What I mean by that is everyone has a story. Everyone has something valuable, important, relevant, interesting to share, and you need to get that story out. And it starts with your about section, right? That has to be an enthralling story. It has to be a story that gets the reader to ideally take some kind of action on you, right? So your about section is where your biggest and perhaps most important story needs to be told. But beyond that, that's all I'm doing is I'm telling stories. I'm sharing information in a storytelling way. And I'm also doing it true to my personality. You've got to let your character, your personality shine, and don't be afraid in worrying about what other people might think about that, right? You're unique. Thank goodness we are all unique, because boy, it would be a boring beige world if we were all saying the same things and all believed in the same thing. So be unique. Don't worry about what others might think. Be a little strange or a little weird, because I know I am. I do some weird stuff, right? And you probably do too. So get over that fear. Get over that. I mean, I get a lot of clients who say, "Andy, you know what? I mean, I've done all these amazing things in my career, but I just don't feel comfortable showing off."
That's exactly what I'm talking about. There are different reasons why they just can't push themselves to do it. Exactly.
I get it, and I think it's something to do with Midwestern perhaps humility, and I tell them, look, if you don't do it, then no one else is going to do it for you. Number one. Number two, your competitors are already doing this. They understand the game. And number three, if you earned those credits, right, you did all these amazing things in your career, then you have a right to project and to broadcast and to coast on them, frankly, because that's how you're going to convince people to do what you want them to do. So get over that quickly. As I said, accomplishments, what is your story? And then look out there in terms of, what's succeeding, right? And specifically, I'm talking about not just the about sections, right? You'll see lots of great about sections and you'll think, wow, I can replicate that. I can use that same sort of format or that same approach. I'll make it my own narrative, my own about section. You can do the exact same thing with content, right? Because you can quickly see whether a content is succeeding or failing. And of course, you want to replicate, you want to use the successful content out there for your purposes, right? That's how you come across as someone who perhaps knows how to, knows what their brand is, right? Knows how to broadcast it or project it, knows how to promote themselves, but not in a promotional way, but in an insightful, here's something of value, here's something important that I want to share kind of way.
So that's really good. Just to go back, it's interesting. When I was thinking, I think when most people think about LinkedIn, it's kind of making a post, writing something, responding to something. But you're saying start with the story, start with the about. And when you say that, should people interpret that that's a narrative, or is it just factual, like bullet point, or is it you're literally telling a story like you're talking to a friend?
So the way that I craft summaries for my clients, or the about section as they're called now, is that I like there to be a beginning, middle, and end. I think people are very interested in the origin story, where people started off. So, and often that's where their passion is. That's where it comes from. So I was working, for example, with a client whose father was in the jewelry business, started off as a salesperson, and then actually started his own store. And she's done something similar. So that's an origin story, and people identify that with that. I think fundamentally, Jack, when people read the about section, they want to understand, I think they're desperate to understand what makes people click. Whether that's a recruiter trying to make a decision on you, or whether that's a potential business partner, or perhaps your boss thinking about elevating you, whatever the objective might be. I think that's fundamentally what people want to see there. The factual stuff, keep that for the experience section, right? Because that it is what it is, right?
Right.
But the about section is definitely an opportunity to market yourself. Absolutely.
Now, when you said get a little, weird about it, is how weird do you get, or does it depend on what you do for a profession? Like if you're like an artsy creative, then I guess you could be really weird. If you're like in a stuffy investment bank, maybe not so much, or it holds for everything.
So I think there's something called creative license.
Okay.
And I don't think that it's career specific, frankly.
Okay.
Some professions, and one that I came from, might still be quite stuffy. So I'm thinking about the legal profession. So there may be limits, right? There may be some guardrails in terms of what you can and can't do. But if you think of it instead of, oh, that might be weird, or that might not be understood, if you think of it in terms of a creative license, I'll give you an example. There was a guy's headline a few years back that I pointed out, which I thought was incredibly funny, and he was a copywriter. But part of his headline, I don't remember the full headline, but the one that the part that stuck out to me was "not a doctor." and that told the story. What that told me was his mum, probably, or his parents, wanted him to become a doctor, right? Yeah. And now that's forevermore enshrined, right? Yeah. That disappointment, he went his own path. So that's what I mean by creative license, not a doctor. It's all about choosing the right words, and then the other thing is, of course, you can change it based on what inspires you. So if you see something, then you change whatever it is on your profile. Your LinkedIn profile page is a living, breathing document. It's dynamic. It changes when you want and when you change.
It's interesting. So I can say it's something that could draw you in, because I can't, whether it's Twitter or what have you, for turning back the clock a couple months ago, there's this whole big thing about a doctor. Like you're on a plane with your parent and they say, "Oh, is there a doctor there?" And the mom and dad look to the kid. Well, if you were a doctor, they would be calling you. A little guilt there. So it taps into something to some families that they're looking for their kid to be a doctor, lawyer, what have you. That's it. And now, would you take that and then when you want to go online to market yourself, to brand yourself, same things, or kind of you change it up a little bit?
Yeah, so there are many different ways that you can go to market in terms of content, as an example. So your profile page, that's one piece. I also advise on content strategies. So what I found is that it takes a long time to get any kind of traction, Jack, online, on LinkedIn in particular. And so my favorite expression is I'm an overnight success that took 8 years. Yeah. Because it seems like, well, he's come from nowhere, but actually I've been working at this, day in, day out, and I've been fairly obsessed with the LinkedIn platform. And most people, I'm sure you know this, most people are not. In Correct. Fact, they suddenly decide, oh crap, I need LinkedIn, or I need a LinkedIn page, or I need LinkedIn to do something for me. And in particular, these days, I need LinkedIn, right, to find the next gig. I need it urgently. And unfortunately, the expression, you should be digging a well before you're thirsty, that definitely applies to LinkedIn, right? In an ideal world, you should have been building up your social currency to spend on LinkedIn by building relationships over the years, so that when you parachute in and say, help me, help me, help me, you'll have a band of brothers and sisters who are willing to do that, because it's about reciprocity, but it's about those relationships, right? So the people that are helping you, ideally, know that if they help you, then
Mm-hmm.
they can cash their favor in when it comes to their time of need. So there are a bunch of things here. You do need to be building relationships. You can't just expect to have success straight away. This applies to not just in this networking sense, but also in terms of the content journey. I have thousands of followers, and I don't really care about having thousands of followers. What I care about is having a hardcore of fans who, when they see my posts, will jump in and start engaging, right? So that's what you need. That's what you need to try and build up as quickly as possible. And the best way to do that is just to start by writing or start by creating content. And you can go to market in many different ways. You can use stories. You can use video, native video. If you get access to LinkedIn Live, like you have, you can do LinkedIn Live. But you can also write articles. You can write posts. So there are many, and the way, and also it's an easy setup, right? There are very few barriers to doing all of this. You just start writing, and LinkedIn gives you all of the publishing, tools to do that. And as I said before, look at others, look to how other people are succeeding, and then try and replicate that.
Now that strategy would still be for somebody who is a job seeker, but not, somebody who's trying to build a following, because it sounds like even if you're a job seeker or you're looking for your next, you're working, but just want to be out there, so develop a reputation. Still, you want to cultivate that audience. You want to build your network around it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not just about having it's not just about building the fan base. It's also about influencing the people that you are targeting, right? So from a job seeker point of view, you will have presumably a short list of dream companies and dream jobs, and you have done your due diligence, and you will have looked for the decision makers in those target companies. You will have found them on the LinkedIn platform. You will have monitored their recent activity, right? So now, right, if you compare the information at your fingertips and the access and the strategy techniques that you have available now, they are nothing in comparison to what we had 10, 15 years ago, right? You should be able to touch those people. You should be able to make them aware of your presence, either via browsing. If you browse, you're my target, Jack. I'm not connected with you, but I browse your profile. You browse me back. All right. So I've got a premium membership. I can see who's browsed me. I can go back 3 months to see who's browsed me. I browse you, you browse me back. Now I know for sure that I'm on your radar. Next step, I'm going to send a connection request, or better still, I'll follow you. You follow me back. Now I definitely know there's some potential in building a relationship with you. I send you a connection request, but it's a meaningful connection request along the lines of, "Dear Jack, I saw your comment about I don't know, hot air ballooning the other day, and I thought it was spot on. I would love to connect with you and give you direct access to my network." That last bit's important because it's not just about what's in it for me. I'm giving you access to my network that I've built up. So there's something in it for you. But I've also showed you that I'm paying attention to who you are and what you do. So I've researched you. So I'm a cut above the whatever it is, the candidate that other people might go in cold. So you're using the LinkedIn mechanism to create awareness, to get on the person's radar, and you do that ideally. You can be perhaps I was going to say go for coffee, but these days it's all virtual, right? But you can have virtual meetings, and then I hate the expression "take it offline" because offline to me is dead. If something is
not
offline,
much you can do offline right now, right?
Offline yes, but take it virtual. So that's one example of how to leverage LinkedIn. Another example might be perhaps you don't want to go straight to their profile. Perhaps you want to look to see what the company, the organization, one of those dream companies is doing. Perhaps they've got a custom hashtag. So you start looking at their custom hashtag to see all of their content that they're currently excited or interested about. And you school yourself, you educate yourself on the types of subjects that are, that are of interest to them. And then you start to build up a profile, a better understanding about, that organization. Because the more informed you are before meeting any of them, before saying anything to them, then obviously the more successful you're going to be. So that's just some ways to go about being an informed and insightful LinkedIn
what I'm hearing from
job seeker.
what I'm hearing what you described is really to be thoughtful about what you're doing. And I think most people, and I'll include myself there as well, kind of just jump into the water. It's like, I know how to swim. I'm going to jump in the water and just swim, without really having a thoughtful approach and say, wait, I just jumped into the deep end, and really I'm not that great of a swimmer. So maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should wait kind of in the middle and work my way up. And what the undercard I'm getting is really like, all right, this is not just because it seems like so easy to go and do, and you're on there and you'll get noticed. It's not that easy. And you really have to have a game plan, and you have to really think it through and employ some of the strategies you were talking about, so that you can be more productive in getting in touch with the right people, having the right people get in touch with you.
Yeah,
which takes time, which is a lot. It's a lot. You make it sound easy, but right, it's a lot of.
No, it's not.
It's a fair amount of time, right?
It takes time. Yeah. It takes a technique. It takes nuance as well, because ideally you're trying to stand out from the crowd, but you want to do that in such a way that comes across as someone who is keen to get ahead, obviously, but understands how to work the system, which in this case is LinkedIn. And there are many different creative ways of doing that. For sure. You've checked me out now, so we followed each other. Now you're looking at my activity section, so my content stream, and then he's written something about hot air ballooning, so that's what our company does. That's interesting. Okay, so he's an accountant. Well, actually, we're looking for and it's all about these happy coincidences or discovery, whatever you want to call it, us bumping into each other, but you're in control of the bumping into each other, right? You're making these connections happen, and there's no limit in terms of doing this, right? The only limit is your time and your ingenuity in how to do that. But the two fundamental ways of doing that are, get your story straight on your profile page, make sure it's immaculate, better than anyone else's, right? Super professional, no mistakes, typos, etc. So making sure you've got your best suit on, the equivalent of your best suit on, and then go hunting, and then do your due diligence on your dream target companies, and then specifically drill down on the people, the decision makers that you need to influence in some way, and then you start following them and use the return browse, and then if you connect with them, then fantastic. Maybe you don't want to connect with them. Maybe you're just happy following them. Find out which groups they belong to. What are they doing in the group? What are they talking about? Ideally, you'll become a known quantity, and the more they know you, then the more likely they're going to perhaps invite you for the first round, the screener. So LinkedIn is definitely a tool, but it's a tool that needs to be understood to be fully leveraged.
It's interesting, because I'll have, as a recruiter, I'll advise people before they go on an interview, and I'll even say stalk, because I'm not going to mince words. Stalk.
It is stalking,
the people you get to meet with, but there's a good percentage of them feel very uncomfortable. Put aside the word stalk, but feel very uncomfortable doing what you mentioned, because they feel like they're invading someone's privacy. Would you suggest to go incognito to do that? Because it's a thing. I definitely hear from candidates, they feel uncomfortable doing it. And I would say to them, well, you really need to look at it, because you want to know as much about the interview as possible. Did you go to the same school? Did you grow up in the same area? Do you know the same people? There's so many things that you learn from the person that when you go into the interview, you could be much more confident, because you're like, oh my gosh, I really know Andy, all about him, what he's about. So when we go and have that conversation, I know he's I'll make this up, you're a Chicago, baseball fan. So like, we'll talk about baseball, and it just breaks the ice. But there's a lot of people, they feel uncomfortable doing that. Have you noticed that? Do you see that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And people use that same word, Jack. I don't want to stalk.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? LinkedIn is a stalking platform. That's actually what it's designed. That's what it's designed to do. is to make stalking available to you, and
It's socially acceptable stalking.
it's normalized.
Permitted,
It's normalized stalking, and everyone does it, and your competitors certainly are doing it, and to browse someone in private doesn't help you. It's a sneaky type of endeavor. Sure, you might learn something from it, but guess what? If they have premium and they're checking their browser history, and you don't appear on their radar, then that doesn't help you. So get over that. Again,
it's weird. I'll be really straight up. There, like, as you can imagine, as a recruiter, you always want to look at profiles. But then I find myself, let's say I look at Jane Doe's profile, right? Because I'm thinking of her for a job. And if I go back another day and look, I'm like, oh my God, she's going to think I'm a weirdo. And like, why am I keep looking at profile? And I want to say, well, no, I'm looking at profile because I think you're great for the job, not because I'm, a creep. But there is that element, I think, where people have it. I think you've overcome it. I think a lot of people wrestle with it. I'll put myself included. If I'm looking at, let's say there's somebody who I want to have, I'm making this up, on a podcast, right? And I see them and I want to see their stuff because I want to see their stuff we could talk about. And then maybe I was like, I can't remember these. And I go back again. Then I'm like, oh my God, they're going to think, what's wrong with me? Why am I keep going back? And I have that feel. I do go back anyway, but I do have that little feel. And I think if I do that, a lot of people are going to have that. But you've passed it. It seems like you've come to like, nope, that's what you got to do.
I've reached the point of no return.
That's what it's for. It's stalking.
Yes,
stop it. Don't worry about it.
And of course, there are. I'll be searching for another Jack Kelly, and I'll land on his profile when I met you. And so there are always accidents in terms of browsing, but I could have multiple tabs open on my browser, and it may record that I'm it may appear that I'm looking at you every day, but it's just that I have my tab open. So I think people understand all these technical explanations, but the big explanation, as I said, is that this is a stalking platform. This is what it's designed for, and it's public, right? And you put yourself out there to
because I don't think I've ever heard anybody, just like say about, hey, this is just to pull back the veneer. Let's be frank. This is a stalking platform. This is what it is. This is what you got to do, and say it so matter of factly. I think I think you're the only person who brought up, but you're so right. I mean, that's what it is. And I think when you say that, it gives people the comfort to say, oh, okay, I could do it. That's fine. So if you have those kind of reluctancies that I mentioned, like I said, I'm being very, very upfront about that a lot of people have it like, oh, all right, yeah, I guess that's fine. It's almost like LinkedIn should say that, like, okay, we want you to do it. Or maybe that's not socially acceptable for them. I don't know.
Well, I don't think they've ever said that. I mean, back in the day, Jack, they used to say, look, only connect with people that you know, which was always, to me, it was a head scratcher, because the whole point, for me,
you meeting people
was it's like I want to connect with people that I don't know.
Right, you want to meet new people.
Yes, exactly. And I think the whole stalking thing is, this is an old website. It was created, I think, in 2002. So I think we're beyond the fact that the concern about I'm being stalked. I mean, if you're that concerned about being stalked, with a capital S, then you block that person. So. There's that. But I think the worst case scenario, Jack, would be, particularly for job seekers, would be to feel invisible, right? To feel ignored. That's the absolute worst. You're on there. You want to get something done. You want people ideally to discover you, and at the end of the day, you want to get something from all of your effort. And stalking is part of that. It's not stalk, it's research, and people research. Why not? That's what it's there for. And some of us are good at it, and some of us can learn how to be good at it.
So I'm glad you brought up about people want to be noticed. They don't want to be ignored. What would you suggest for somebody who just lost their job, or maybe they've been out of work for a while, and they're like, all right, I got to do something. And you talked about the story, the about side, finding people to connect with. But any suggestions to just really get out there and brand themselves, make themselves known?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would do is find a local group. So that's going to be online, right? That's going to be virtual, who are in the same boat,
Mhm.
right? So in the same situation. I think that brings a certain kind of comfort and support, right? And having people that are walking in your footsteps, going through the same kind of hardship. I think find a local group or a virtual group. It doesn't have to be industry or function specific, but that may help. So job seeker group, and then find a group that is also trying to
Wait, I don't mean
leverage.
to. Now, this would be on LinkedIn,
Yes,
or could this be LinkedIn and just other
could could
online groups? And
could be. I'm thinking online. I'm
okay,
not thinking LinkedIn, right?
okay.
Online, because a variety of, and then ask as well. Ask your friends, hey, have you ever been in my situation? Is there a group, a job seeker group, and in particular start speaking to them about LinkedIn and how to fully leverage that platform, because chances are they'll know how to, or they'll know someone, or if not, they'll have some basic skills, and do that. And that ought to be free, right? So that's not going to cost you anything but your time. And then start to learn how to fully leverage LinkedIn in terms of the techniques that I've been speaking about, but learn from those job seeking peers. And then don't write anything, just observe, right? Observe for a week on LinkedIn, look at profiles, and just cycle through profiles. Ideally not your target companies yet, because you may not be ready, right, for prime time. Just cycle through profiles, perhaps profiles in your industry, in your function, and then decide whether or not these profile pages are good, great, or middling. And if they're great, then look at why they're great. Try to understand what makes them great. Was it their banner, right? Did they have a professional looking banner, right? What about their headshot? Was their headshot impressive, or was it meh, right? And try to emulate those impressive headshots. Maybe get I mean, my current headshot is an iPhone portrait, right? I've got the iPhone 10, and that was number 68 in my bathroom. So you don't have to spend any money, right? And if you don't have an iPhone 10, then borrow one or borrow a friend's, right? But you can probably get a great headshot from your phone these days, because the camera's excellent, and you have that, perhaps portrait software if you're on iOS. And then look at the about section on those profile pages that you're cycling through. Which ones stand out to you? Which ones impact you? Which ones told their story and made you remember them? Okay, did they resonate in some way? How are you going to tell your story? And take a bash at that, and then make sure that your experience section is full, right? So you're sharing as much info about your career trajectory, about your career path in your experience section as possible. Don't worry about the headline so much, or the name, but certainly get the headshot correct. And then, right, once you're ready for prime time, start to think about content strategy. Okay, how am I going to get on the radar of some of these decision makers in my my target companies? How am I going to get that dream job? What am I going to write about? Is it hot air ballooning just because Jack Kelly's into that, or is it accountancy because that's my thing? That's my that's my jam. So that's, I think, the initial step is look for that initial support group, make sure that they're doing LinkedIn, start talking about LinkedIn, sharing techniques and what works, and then start doing your own research on what you can see out there in terms of excellent profile pages, very professional, but also excellent content.
So by doing that, you become familiar, and you can say, okay, this is what I get is a pretty good, attractive profile, makes sense, and maybe I could take some of what they're doing and take the best of what I see out there. But then also, it gives you some sense of, all right, you're not going to choose the company you want to work for first. It sounds like you start with whatever other company, but you get a sense of who works there, their background. So your antenna is up and you're kind of absorbing all this information. Then when you're looking at the companies you want to work for and finding the people there, you kind of, all right, I know who to look for, what to look for in these profiles. So
Yeah,
so
and
you're a little educated about it.
very educated.
Yeah.
If you have if you have nothing but time, then you can take your time doing this. But I would say it's very important to understand not just who the decision makers are, but where they sit with in terms
Mhm.
of the organization, right? Who do they interface with? And think of yourself getting beyond the screener all right, just to make sure you've got all the qualifications, and getting to interview. Maybe that's a virtual interview these days. And imagine having the ease of the conversations you'll have, because you are so more informed than your competitors, because you've spent at least a week analyzing the decision maker's recent activity and the people around him or her, and you understand, what they're interested in, what they're excited about, what they typically talk about on LinkedIn, if you're lucky, right? Because recent activity can be hit or miss. If someone is not terribly active on LinkedIn, that's your decision maker, then there's not a lot on LinkedIn to go by. But LinkedIn is just one website, right? You can look at their digital breadcrumbs and see where else they are on the web if you have a name, and you can research them, out with external to LinkedIn. So, but yeah, there's no excuse for not doing any research these days on your target companies and your target people.
Are there things that people do on LinkedIn, I'm sure there are, that just drive you crazy? Then you look and go, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Are there things that you want to tell people? Listen, if you're doing such and such, please stop. Don't do it. For the love of God, stop it. This is not good.
Yeah, there are a bunch of things. I think my top three don'ts would be the headshot with a celebrity, right? I saw one the other day with a guy and with Richard Branson, and it's like, come on. He's a sales guy, but who cares, right? It's like, it's you. You don't need someone else in the frame. You're selling yourself. You're not saying, oh, look, I managed to stand with Richard Branson for 5 seconds before he told me to
buzz off, right?
Yeah, to get lost. So people see through that, right? They're looking for authenticity, but they're also looking for professionalism. So, you wouldn't have the headshot dressed like James Bond, dressed like you're just about to go to a cocktail party in your bow tie. Right? It doesn't make any sense on LinkedIn. So, you don't even have to wear a suit or a jacket or a tie, depending on your industry. But as long as you're looking smart and you're not unkempt, it's got to be your face, your likeness on that, and it's got to be recent. So there's no point having that meeting and they don't recognize you, because that shot that you loved, like of you 20 years ago, thinner and less gray.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's like, don't do that.
Hilarious.
It's got to be you. It's got to be recent, so they recognize you. And the other thing is emojis. Because I'm a purist, I'm a writer. I want text in your about section.
You don't like it when you have someone like they have 30, when you go to someone's profile, it's like 30 emojis, and like all these things going on, and you're dizzy. Like, where am I supposed to look? What's going on here? It's like, why is that? Do you think they feel that's just going to get your attention? Because that just distracts me.
It drives me nuts. And I think somewhere they may have read, this is, this makes you stand out, or it's easier to digest. Nonsense, right? What's easy to digest is writing, cleverly written, simple writing that does a great job, of narrating your story. You don't need you don't need anything exotic or even the bullets. I just want the standard black circle business bullets. Don't do anything like ticks. What does a tick indicate? A tick means that's right. No, it's, or a star. Just go with the round. Don't do anything crazy in your about section. Keep your headshot professional and make sure it's current.
So you wouldn't be a fan of the guy who has his arm around, like cropped out with his girlfriend to show, hey, look, I have a girlfriend, or the logo of his sports team that he follows, or his car, or his alma mater. So I guess those don't fit either.
No, not at all. And don't write your about section in the third person either.
Jack Kelly is the finest recruiter ever.
Don't do that. That was never credible to start with. Everyone knows that you wrote it.
What about you don't have a picture at all? Does that bug you? That drives me crazy.
It's a problem, isn't it? Because it looks one of two things, right? You're hiding something, or you can't be bothered. So it's never a good look to have that that gray icon. Just get your photo in there and make sure that everything is completed on your profile page, because LinkedIn will ding you, right? If you're not an all-star, if you don't have all-star status, then you probably won't appear in as many searches as all-star people. So in other words, they want maximum data from you. Give them maximum data so that you're not fettered in any way in terms of appearing in searches by recruiters and whoever.
All right, what do you think about this? Don't make fun of me for this, Eddie, but when I look, let's say I'm conducting a search for whatever it is, and if I see the picture of somebody, and if they look happy, I go into contacting them feeling good. If they look like, a lot of people have that look, like, I don't know, they have like, some kind of like angry look, whatever. I'm still going to contact them. But going into it, I have my guard up a little bit.
So,
is that a normal thing? Like, would you?
No,
or
it's
that just.
I mean, that's a completely valid and normal reaction. I'd say. I try and put myself in that person's shoes, because it might be that they're not confident about their smile, right? It might be something as simple as that. And so, for the longest time, I had a headshot that looked a lot like this. And I made it work for me. I happened to be squinting in the sunlight, but I made it work for me because I changed my headline to "The reason I'm not smiling is because I've seen so many bad LinkedIn profiles today."
Oh, I remember seeing. Yeah.
So you
don't have that one. That was a former one, right?
Yeah. So because I realized that my countenance looked grumpy, and I thought I'd make something of it. But in real life, as you can hopefully tell, I'm
all right. Since we're talking about it, I got to tell you, when I saw your pictures, right, I would have pictured you, no pun intended, I would picture you as a different person. I would picture you much more gruff, much more surly, and like you're coming across, the nicest guy. So that's what I'm talking about. It's so interesting because you formulate opinions about somebody, and like, not to get off topic, but how there's a conversation about unconscious bias. Turn back the clock. I was like, wow, what's that? But you know what? I get it now, because not just for, from racial issues, but just regular people. Like, like I remember seeing that, like that early picture of you and thinking, all right, I don't know, this guy might not be the friendliest guy to get in touch with. And clearly I'm wrong. And I had an unconscious bias about it because you're totally opposite.
Yeah.
So,
until we start talking to each other, we really don't know that much, right? There's only so much that we can, I guess, absorb, and then at a glance, right, we make those snap judgments. It's a real thing.
Yeah. All right. Off topic a little bit. Since 2008 ish, being on LinkedIn, they're always changing the algorithms. They're always kind of changing different things. How do you feel about that? Does that make your life miserable because you have to follow everything they're doing?
No, actually, it gives me something to write about.
Good point. There you go. All right. So you want that? Oh yeah, duh. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, I love it. I love it when LinkedIn tweak the algorithm, because people like myself who are, somewhat obsessive about what's going on in the platform, and I'm constantly trying to decipher, right, what's happening, certainly in terms of content, because that's make or break for a lot of folks who depend on LinkedIn for a livelihood, right? They need a certain amount of engagement. They need that discovery happening all the time. They need reach. But yeah, it's something for me to write about. And what I found, no surprise, is that there's huge appetite for anything LinkedIn algorithm related, because everyone is trying to figure this out, trying to understand, what the latest ramifications are of a tweak or whatever's happening. So, and then there's endless speculation, because of course LinkedIn will never, very rarely come out and say, we've made a change and here's why. So there's a vacuum in between those moments when they do declare something has changed and why. They give a reason. In between, there's a vacuum, and everyone jumps into that vacuum, myself included. And we're just guessing. Hopefully some of those are intelligent guesses based on what we've actually seen with our own content.
So this is third grade Jack Kelly naivete here. Why can't they just have it where you post something and it just, if you have X amount of first degree, it goes to them, and you just go to follows.
Dude, that's actually the way. That's the way it should be.
Am I missing something? Why is it not how?
I'll tell you why. Because LinkedIn needs a hopper, right? There's so
Wait, what's
many
a hopper? What does that mean?
by which I mean there are so many creators who are
Right.
pumping out a huge amount of volume of content daily, every second on the platform, right? Millions. And LinkedIn needs an algorithm to operate like a hopper, right? So all that data is coming through, and it's being tested at the bottom of that hopper. Right, so the algorithm is doing all of the heavy lifting in terms of deciding whether or not content is good, who should see it, and how often they should keep testing that content. So it's determining the reach it should get, and based on how people are interacting with that piece of content, it gets affirmation of whether or not the algorithm got it right in that first test. Keeps on testing until eventually the post dies. So that's the hopper analogy, but that's why they do it, Jack. They need an algorithmic approach to dealing with content initially, and then at some stage, LinkedIn editors may get involved, may boost their favorite content or content which they think is, it deserves to be boosted, because it is, after all, it's a publishing house and they control it.
Mm-hmm. See, it's so interesting because I think most people would feel the same way, that I brought up. Like, wait, if I post it, it should just go out to the people I posted. It doesn't work that way. But it does make sense from what you're saying, is if you have, it was 600 million, whatever it might be now, on the platform. And even if you have a small percentage just putting out a lot of content, it could be garbage content, and they have to have some controls. Otherwise, it's like you're drinking from a fire hose. It's just out of control, and they got to make it more of a water fountain that's more control.
There is a for the longest time, a lot of people, including myself, have been calling for a subscribe button. So similar to a follow button, but once you click subscribe, then you're guaranteed to see every time Jack Kelly publishes something, right?
Why do they do that? It's brilliant.
So they're kind of doing that with something called newsletter. Newsletter gives that option to subscribe to Jack Kelly. So Jack Kelly gets in the habit of writing a post or an article, and then your subscriber base increase. Well, they see that, and then you have that ability to increase.
Is that out now, or
it is out? But it's rolling. It's rolling out. So newsletter, it's rolling out. Not everyone has access to
newsletter or newsletter.
Newsletter.
Wow.
Newsletter. Yeah, LinkedIn newsletter. I don't have it yet, and the only way that you can check to see if you have it is to go and write an article. Go into the write an article section, and if you have it, you'll see at the top something to do with a message regarding do you want to start a newsletter, and then you take it from there. But that's the only way that you'll figure out.
Is that still a thing? For a while, it was recommended, hey, write a letter. You could write your own article and publish it there, like Medium, and put it out there. But I don't see much of that anymore. Is that something you'd recommend to job seekers if, let's say, they're good at writing and this is a way they could showcase their talents and their abilities? Or
absolutely.
So people still use it, and it's.
I would. I mean, and it's not just. I don't think that you have to be good at writing. I think everyone has inherently something of value to share. And my early stuff was crap. My writing. I'm glad that my early blog content has been buried and kind of is forgotten now.
You get better as you go, of course. Yeah.
Invariably, you get better. And the best advice I gave myself was, just write how you speak, because when you do that, you're less worried about the words that you're using.
Absolutely.
And then you're actually engaged. It's easier, I think, to engage with the reader, because it's almost like having a conversation with that person. That's my style. It's conversational.
Andy, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah, it's conversational. It's informal, and it's all about, I want to put value, but I also want to put some of my humor, some of my snark, some of my independent thinking, and wrap it all up and put it out there. But everyone can do that. It's not, I don't think it's a special talent. Just write how you speak and get stuck in.
I tell you, that's great, because that's exactly what I do. And it makes it so much easier, because you know yourself and know who you are, and you just put it out there, and you don't have to pretend you're somebody else. And it flows. It flows because you're being authentic. And then people pick up on it because they get that you're being authentic,
Yes.
You're putting it out there.
So, Yeah, and the good news, sorry, so just one final thought on that, is that the good news is that it seems like a whole bunch of Facebookers have descended on the LinkedIn platform over the last 18 months or so, by which I mean they have started to share all kinds of content, right? You've noticed aspirational, deeply personal stuff, Jack,
that was
right?
one of the questions. That's
right?
one of the questions
So
I have here.
Again, it's similar to our conversation about stalking. It's like everything is game now, right? Everything is fair game on LinkedIn. Whatever you want to talk about, you talk about it. Worry less about it being professional. Worry more about it being authentic. And ideally, yes, if you can impart some kind of value, perhaps show off a little, then have at it.
Well, there are two things. One, so about the articles part, is that what they're still called, articles, or?
Yeah, so there are articles and there are posts. So that the posts are the flavor of the month right now. That's what most people tend to do in terms of content.
Post is just if you're posting something,
Post is 1,300 characters or less, right? So it's very short. It's kind of like the newspaper of the day. Used to have a shelf life of 24 hours. Now has been extended. So you'll still get some hits. You'll still get engagement.
What's the post different than if you're just going into your regular, I guess, status, and you're just writing something? Is that the post, or is that something different?
So that's a post, and funnily enough, that's what it used to be called. It used to be called a status update, but now it's just referred to as a post.
I'm old-fashioned, Andy. See, I'm using all the wrong terms.
No, you're that's what you probably remember. Status update, and then the article can be as long as you want, right? It can be 20,000 words plus, and that's a completely different thing. It gets indexed by the search engines. So you write a good one and you'll get that long tail engagement from the web, because it's out there on the web. Posts are not indexed on Google.
So then for an article, see, I thought it was kind of dying out a little bit, but I'm so glad you brought it up, because would then make sense for, let's say, the job seeker, someone who's working, but keep their eyes open and want people to know them, so put content out there with what you're suggesting. They don't have to be a great writer, but they could just say, hey, I'm working in the pharmaceutical space, and there's so much action now thinking about vaccines and all that. So let's say a person's knowledgeable, they could write about, hey, this is what's going on with Moderna, this is going on with Pfizer, J&J, and it burnishes their reputation. So even if they're not looking, they start becoming a thought leader and a go-to person. And that, like you're saying, so if they have a long tail, it's going to be on there for a while, then recruiters would see them, hiring managers, HR. So do you think, would that be a good suggestion for people to do?
Absolutely. So that's digging your well before you're thirsty. That's doing that kind of stuff. Now, articles certainly do that. But as a step to that, right, you could also curate. So some of those decision makers that you're desperate to get on their radar, you could start sharing, right, resharing their content, right, resharing their posts, which not only is a nice thing to do, but it's also, who's this Andy Foote character? What? I see he's in the same space. That's why he's sharing it. And he's got 120 people, in his whatever, in his network, or 1,200. And then when you reshare, Jack, what you should do is not just reshare it, which is very easy to do, but you should also add your own prelude to it. You should.
That's what's good. Okay, so you have to write something on that. Yeah.
So don't just reshare it, but actually put your own spin or your own comments or your own thoughts about what you're sharing and why you're sharing it. And so have that meaningful approach to curating, and you can do that. And I think it's probably going to be easier than writing your own original content to start with, because you get into that habit, that flow of working with content.
I think that's a great idea. It's interesting. The first time I saw someone do that with one of my articles, at first, being the cynical New Yorker guy, I'm like, wait, did this person just steal my article and taking credit? What? They're like, oh no, okay, they're actually doing a nice thing. So that's unfortunately
tag. So you would tag, you would tag
so
Jack Kelly.
Wait. Yeah, that's really nice. They're taking my article and they're just giving, and then they put their kind of spin on it, and they give it a little texture and layers. I'm like, cool. And I always respond to those right away. I'm like, hey, Andy, thank you so much for sharing it. Great. Hey, I like your point about this, because it's a very nice thing to do. Yeah. So
you can get over that fear of copying or being a copycat, because you credit by tagging, hey, thanks very much. This article on hot air ballooning by Jack Kelly. Love this. And he
You
might
love
want
hot air balloons.
No,
What's that?
I'm just using that as an example throughout.
Although I got to tell you, I don't know if they have it in, you're in Chicago, right?
Correct.
So I don't know if they have it there, but this year they didn't have it this summer. They would have the balloon races in these big open fields in New Jersey where I live, and these hot air balloons, and they're all sorts of, cartoon characters, whatever, and they're flying up. And I don't care what age you are, you see that, it's majestic. It's amazing. It's beautiful to watch.
Very, very relaxing, I'm sure.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you bring it up, because I'm not a hot balloon fan, but it just, yeah, I'll show you some pictures I took of it. So it blows your mind when you just see those things up there just floating around. Fantastic. Well, one last question about like LinkedIn, because I can't believe how much this time flew by. And then I'll let you go, because I've been rude, just pepper you with questions, but I did have a lot of questions from people. So I wanted to get it through. The open to work banner.
Yes.
Yay or nay?
Nay. So I'll tell you what. I put a poll out as well about the open to work banner, and I asked what people thought, and I made it very simple. Most of my polls are yes or no, and just not by a large margin, but just the no's had it. So they decided it was not a good idea. And in particular, a lot of the people who commented were career coaches, and they said, actually, it's not a good idea. And some of the reasoning went as follows. There's no differentiation when you put that green circle on your headshot. So there's nothing that basically sells you beyond I'm looking. And I think there are more intelligent ways, more impactful ways, should I say, that to demonstrate, your value and what you can do for an organization. And you can do that in your about section. You can even do that in your headline if you craft a great headline that talks to your value, but not only your value, but what specifically you can do. The green banner doesn't do that. So at a glance, I think it can be easily dismissed. So that's my thinking. I think also it's I was going to say it can't be searched on. I think that's right. I don't think they can do a visual search, right, on LinkedIn. So it's really your headline anyway, and what you put in your about section, and from the WeCruitr package, what they're looking for in terms of the boxes they tick, right? So fundamentally, they're looking at skills, and then doing keyword searches. So that's my thinking. I think the third reason I would not put open to work, that circle on there, is that it kind of looks desperate to me. And other people have said this too. I think, you want to look like you belong. You want to look like you're employed, right? You want to catch them at your profile, and you don't want to risk people just scrolling by because you're the 80th person with the green circle that they've seen, in the day. Again, that's the lack of differentiation.
See, so with you, and it's what strikes me as challenging really is this, where you see the open to work or open to opportunities, which I get, but then often, and we started WeCruitr. It's a platform, it's a free platform. Eventually we're going to charge for it because we're hemorrhaging money paying for helping out everyone for free, but it was just to help people during this tough time. And then I would say to them, but a lot of times I could see they're not happy with my answer, kind of what you're saying, that all the reasons you articulated. But then I would also add, oftentimes it'll be something like this, hashtag, open to work, COVID-19 help. And I'm not exaggerating, you know what I mean? Like, hey, COVID-19, I'm out of work. Can you have someone help me? And I'm thinking, well, how can I help you? Christine, who was on earlier to help get it set up, because I'm an idiot when it comes to technology and I need help. So that she was at the beginning saying, hey, what I'm going to do is when I see people open to work, open up, I'll kind of really try to amplify it and put them out there. But then after a while I realized, wait a minute, we're not really helping, because they're not saying, okay, I'm Andy and I'm looking for this job. Here's what I did. Here's my background. Here's my experience. Here's the job I want. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's the compensation rate. It's like, okay, now I know how I could help you. Or if I can't help you, I could find the right person. But if it's just like, help me.
It doesn't work. Yeah, you've got to be as specific as possible.
Right?
the more specific you are, the better, because time is at a premium.
Yeah.
And unless you get those facts over ASAP to people
Exactly.
who
Yes.
then can say,
Yeah.
okay, well, I can, or I can't help, or I know someone who can, you've got to have that specificity.
I appreciate that, because I was thinking, am I the jerk for saying that? But I felt that,
so.
hey, how can I help someone? And then if I start looking to figure it out, I'm like, I start getting frustrated. Like, well, if you want me to help you, why are you making it like a wild goose chase? I'm trying to figure it out, make it easier.
And you know who does help? LinkedIn. I mean, they look like they're helping, right? So do think of it in terms of this is what LinkedIn is doing to help job seekers. So in terms of PR, it ticks that box. I've
also noticed this. Do you notice this? To me, I always viewed LinkedIn as more of a white collar, office type. But over the last certain months, just like you mentioned, so a lot of Facebook, I see a lot of people in other industries, which is fine.
Yep.
But that's probably to your point, what you're saying about LinkedIn. Well, yeah, if we have more members, more people, we have a chance to make more money. Have you seen that too?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no reason why LinkedIn shouldn't be representative of, the entire workforce. And, they all have a valid reason to be on the platform, and they can all excel in their own way. So absolutely, I'm all for that.
Yeah. Do you think LinkedIn should say something like, okay, hey, we now have all these other people. So if your recruiters or hiring managers who maybe aren't on LinkedIn for that or not looking, say, oh, wait, you notice it because you're on it all the time. I notice all the time. Others may not be aware of it. But they don't do that. Do they, LinkedIn? Like, they don't really give those kind of like mass announcements. Hey, here's what's happening.
They do. They tend to do a lot in the dark. And things just change, and I obviously that's the way they prefer it, because a lot of it is testing and rollouts and fixing things. One of my friends said that LinkedIn the way that LinkedIn operates is a lot like them trying to fix their bicycle while they ride it.
Does feel that way.
And so I get that, but they could do a lot more in terms of rollouts. As an example, they could specifically say, okay, you are in this region and you will get newsletters by X date, and take away a lot of the not anxiety, but a lot of the sort of confusion so why don't I have newsletter, right? So they're opaque in some things, and they could just get a lot better at communication, frankly.
Yeah. So you were so generous with your time and your knowledge. I really appreciate it. And what I would encourage people to do, what we're going to do is we're recording it, so then we could, I could give it to you, put on social media, And I would say whoever's watching now, but whoever's most likely going to be watching later on, to go through this a few times, because you may not realize it. You just, I don't know, it's like, what did I hit you, like 10, 12 questions, and you went into depth just walking it through. This is like a graduate school class. And seriously, I'm not exaggerating, in LinkedIn, and what to do, what not to do. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, so anyone who watches this and goes through it, boy, they're going to know all the ins and outs. They're going to think, hey, I do this. Yeah, good for me. Or, oh, I don't. Oof. I walked away with a lot. Like, I'm going to do, can I tell you something? For my articles, I used to post it on articles, and I thought it was dead, so I haven't. I'm going to go back to doing that. So
do it.
Just right off the top, that's one thing, boy, that I'm like, wow, okay, sure. Because that's easy for me, because I have such a library of stuff. I could just copy and paste them, put them in there, and have, a whole bunch of stuff to put out there.
Maybe so that's part of maybe that's part of newsletter, right? Yeah. They're expecting some side of
that, and that's the second thing. I'm going to totally look into that for sure, because this way you get people who share the same interests, and they're getting it, they're having it. Now, I've been rude by just peppering you with questions. To open up to you, are there things that you'd like to bring out, like to bring up to attention, whether it's about LinkedIn or anything else you're working on?
You haven't been rude at all. This is what I signed up for. I wanted to be peppered with questions. Your questions were excellent. That's exactly what I love on the LinkedIn Live, is to have rapid fire questions sent.
Well, sometimes you do when you feel like, all right, I don't want to make it like I'm just let's say, all right, give me a break. Let me take a breather.
No. I expected more. More.
Yeah. All right. We'll get to the next page. We'll do that for the next time. But seriously, is there anything like that we didn't ask that you'd like to share? Or
no, not at all. Just if you want to connect with me, then feel free.
Yes.
I'm obviously on LinkedIn, and I am a budding podcaster. So I think episode 27
Nice.
perhaps of the Footnotes show. Check that out. If you find yourself next to a search engine, look up Foote-Notes, Foote with an E, dash notes, and you'll find my dulcet tones interviewing intrinsically interesting people. So yeah, that's it, Jack. Thank you so much.
Oh, my
for
pleasure.
having
This
me
was great.
on. I
It was
appreciate it.
great meeting you. This is fantastic. And I really appreciate you gave some great advice. So thanks so much.